All right, so this one I want to talk about elections, and we are for sure going to talk about today because they are very, very heavily involved in elections. But before I start to fire off my diatribe, I want to know what's your thought on elections, election tampering, election integrity.
This is my number one issue because no other issue is as important. Without free and fair, clean, trustworthy, whatever we want to think of it, it has to be trustworthy elections, then any kind of legislation is irrelevant. I remember thinking after the 2016 election that there was definitely cheating. I think they try to make it a close battle so everyone's all into it and my team's winning, no, my team's winning. And then they cheat just enough to get the person that they want in. In 2016, they didn't cheat enough. That's what it was. They didn't predict. They underestimated Donald Trump. He won. Everybody was baffled. That's why Hillary was walking around acting like she already won, which is what lost me in the first place. I'm like, I can't vote for this woman. Why is she walking around like she's already won? And this was like 4 months before November. So 2020, we all saw it. They were forcing mail-in ballots, truckloads of ballots rolling in. The report from the truck driver himself in Pennsylvania that drove it in from New York. Persecution of the Republican poll workers alone was enough to convince me. All these things, and every one of those questions were like, nah, didn't happen. Nah, that's not true. I don't digest stuff like that. I want an explanation. Give me a logical explanation. So, in my opinion, there's probably always been cheating. It's been convincing enough that it looks like, my guy almost got it, but maybe next time we'll get him. And that was the plan, and now that plan is shattered. And it is on the government now to prove to us that it's clean and clear. That's why I like voter ID. 1 day in-person voting, paper ballots, hand count. I'm 100% behind all that.
And I've heard people talk about, elections being stolen in the past. Like, for example, I was watching a deep dive. In this deep dive, there was a legal document. It was a communication between Ted Kennedy and an FBI agent. And Ted Kennedy was investigating the potential for people in the intelligence community and the United States government running drugs out of the Golden Triangle in Vietnam. Ted Kennedy was trying to get the FBI to investigate that. One of the documents that surfaced was a communique between someone in George Bush's cabinet. Now, George Bush is running for president. And in this document, this communication that has since been declassified, the one cabinet member says to the other cabinet member, not if, but when George H.W. Bush becomes president. So I've seen things, and you hear people talk about, oh yeah, they used to throw this, that person was involved in the throwing of all these elections in Florida back in the night. Like, you hear these types of things people throw out. 2016, there was something to do with I think it was the hammer and scorecard. In 2016, the hammer and scorecard, and I don't know enough about it, so I don't want to get into it too much, but I know that Hillary Clinton, part of the allegations against her, relaxing as if she had already won. And you see the clips of, Donald Trump will never
I love that montage.
never be president. Tom Hanks is like, when pigs fly, and then he left the country. That's a whole other thing. But anyway, point is that there was something to do with hammer and scorecard, and there was some international interference which helped with that. But I don't know enough about that to discuss. But what I can tell you is this. 2020 was stolen. Because here's what they do. They have the mail-in ballots. The mail-in ballots are huge for fraud. Then they have the guys that were stuffing ballots. If you have the mail-in ballots, right, the mail-in ballots let you know where the numbers are. That's what the mail-in ballots do. The mail-in ballots let you know where the numbers are. I was talking to a very nice, honest person yesterday. Well, how would you know where the numbers are if the ballots are sealed?
Mm-hmm. What do you mean the numbers? Where the numbers are? What do you define numbers?
The only reason for early voting is so that people can get the votes early. They can look at the ballots. They can open up and they can see, okay, here's the early votes. And the Democrats have this much and the Republicans have that much.
Okay.
So they know what the numbers are. Then the machines come in. The machines come in and all of a sudden the Democrats have this much, But now that the early voting is done, or the mail, they want to change it to early voting because it sounds better. Don't call it early voting. It's mail-in voting. I was on a political meeting in my area yesterday where it's driving me nuts listening to them talk about we have to call it early voting, not mail-in voting. And I said, hi, I'm new here, but I'm going to be a real pain in the ass about mail-in voting. I'm just letting you know that now. This is what I said in the meeting last night.
My man.
Okay. Yeah, so I did. I said that last night in the meeting, but they want to call it early voting. So the point is that the early votes come in, the mail comes in, they look at it and they see what the numbers are. They see the Democrats have this much because the Democrats vote by mail way more than Republicans do. Well, Trump is pushing it in 2024. That was the whole thing to try and get them to match it out. But
No.
anyway,
Question. Real
point
question.
is that
Timeout. Question. So,
go
how
ahead.
do if they're not open? Are you suggesting that they're opened ahead of time, or they?
Oh, for
Okay.
sure.
Because
Yeah, of
well,
course.
we
That's the whole purpose for the mail-in ballots. What benefit is a mail-in ballot if you can't open it up early and see what it
but we've
is?
been told that they weren't. So that's all I'm saying.
That's right. Never mind. Joe Biden won. Joe Biden won by more votes than Barack
I know,
Obama.
right?
But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do believe. But here's the thing: Joe Biden wins. Joe Biden wins, and he wins with more votes than anybody ever. Wait. Joe Biden. This guy's a numbskull. Everybody knew he was a numbskull. So that's how we know. I mean, that's the first indicator. That's the first. That's not evidence. It's not evidence, but it's an indicator. So that requires further
It's an
research.
incredibly
You know
large anomaly, whatever it is. Like if
exactly.
you look through all the numbers of voting in history, whatever, like Joe Biden's bar graph like shoots up like way above, and then it's funny in 2024 you saw almost that exact number of winning votes vanish.
So you have the idea of what the numbers are, and then from there, all you do is you have the machine step in at the last minute and provide you what else you need. And just to give you a little bit of history about this, here's how it worked: is that this originated in Venezuela with a company called Smartmatic.
Mm-hmm.
Smartmatic, and they merged with Sequoia, which is an American company. Wait, you can't have a Venezuelan company running American elections, right? Well, they're registered in Florida. They're registered in Florida,
Yeah,
right? Kind of like the IRS is registered in Puerto Rico, but nonetheless, they're
didn't know
registered in
that.
Florida.
This is why I like
Yeah,
talking
they're
to you,
registered.
man. It's crazy.
So they're registered in Florida, but they're a Venezuelan company. It's like when you walk into a Chinese restaurant, do you sit there and go, "This is an American business," or do you go, "No, it's a Chinese business. Everybody's speaking Chinese or cooking Chinese food. Yeah, it's in America, but it's a Chinese business." This Venezuelan company, Hugo Chavez specifically, Hugo Chavez was the first one to use it, right? And it was Venezuelan programmers that came up with this code. Dominion created the machines. Smartmatic has basically like the operating system that works in these machines. Now, here's the interesting thing. Is that you have all of this. You have millions and millions and millions of line of source code, right? So how do you find the source code? Because this Smartmatic software is what has the code that allows them to flip the votes. Okay, so if you have a million lines of code, how do you find the source code from which it allows it to flip? Well, here's the answer. I found out. What they did is they busted the programmers and got the programmers to flip because the programmers can go, it's
No way.
right
When did this
there.
happen? That I didn't know about.
So I heard about this in January. I was lucky to be in a presentation where I heard about it in January, and Patrick Byrne was talking about this with my uncle. He said they brought General Flynn over there, and General Flynn was talking to these guys. I guess he said last summer, and they said to him, "Well, yes, sir, we've been doing this for 20 years now." So there's a company called SEPS. SEPS is the Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening. The Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening. So here's what happens. SEPS comes in. SEPS comes in. Wait, now, who is SEPS? Well, SEPS is an NGO, right? SEPS is an NGO. NGO, which until recently, this NGO was funded by USAID. And what's another name for USAID? That's right, folks, the CIA. So the CIA is funding SEPs through U.S. aid, and then guess, you want to guess a high up in whose organization was running SEPs? Take a guess. You tell me who's the crooked, evil person who's running the world from behind, who's funding all sorts of bad stuff.
Well, you could say Klaus Schwab or George Soros. Take your pick.
George Soros, biggity bam, bing, 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 Open Society. So you have Open Society running SEPs, which is an American company. And what they're doing is they're going to other countries like the Philippines and going, hey guys, we're here from SEPs, this great company. SEPs goes into these countries like the Philippines and goes, hey guys, you guys have these old paper things. Let's give you these new fancy machines. We got these new fancy machines. And they're operating in like 72 different countries, and so far, the number's like 26 countries have had elections with these brand new machines, and 100% have turned. What do you think? Have they turned blue or have they turned red? 100% have turned
Blue.
Hey, hey, look at that. It's not that hard to figure out. That's what's happening in the world right now. That is what is happening in the world right now.